Hello, we're up and running. We're going to start this week talking about a poll that suggests that 50% of people think that terrorists should be sentenced to death. Does that, Kiki, make us any better than ISIS?
No, I don't believe we're God, and I don't believe that any one human or any amount of humans should ever be given the choice to take another life away at all, for any reason. And another question I think that's important is when will there be a solid dividing line between terrorists and
non-violent
extremists?
Non-violent extremists.
That when David Cameron stated that ISIS is just as dangerous as us. So where do they draw that line where they're not starting to execute children who are fighting for a good cause? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, that's the problem that I think people need to understand, is that although in the heat of the moment, and that's why everybody always says never make a decision when you're angry, because in the heat of the moment, when you've seen a story like the Charlie Hebdo case, which may get you angry, and in that anger you become ignorant because you start to say, oh my God, look at all these Muslims, they're doing this, they're bombing that, they're doing this. We need to take away their right to freedom, we need to take away their ability to speak about this issue, we need to take away this, that and the other and have them executed. The problem with that is that anybody, therefore, that is a blanket, every law in Britain is a blanket law. So when you're stopping somebody to talk about Islam or whatever else, you're stopping yourself to talk about whatever you care about. You're stopping about somebody else talking about what if they don't agree with what the government's doing. So it's not just that you're targeting a specific grouping. You're indirectly, or rather directly, promoting anti-freedom laws. So you got to sort of think about what actually are you promoting. You're promoting a society that we're supposed to be fighting against in the Middle East. If you become like them to fight them, what's the point?
1 second, guys.
Well, the other thing I was thinking is, who is the biggest victim of terrorists? Because I wouldn't actually think it was Christians. I would think that the biggest victims of most terrorist attacks are Muslims themselves. You know, even in this country, how many like British Muslims have maybe relatives that are in these places that are getting bombed and attacked, and that you know, they're affected a lot more closely, because we tend to see it very much Muslims against Christians, but you know, we unstabilized the areas, and to a certain extent we created terrorism.
Yeah.
You know? And the more we put into war and Trident and things like that, the more terrorists we're going to create through our actions. Now, people often say religious terrorists, but they're not. They're political issues. Like Hamas is standing up against occupation. Now, yes, some of them are Muslims, some of them probably aren't, because you've got multi-faiths in Palestine. At what point do we walk away from the title of somebody's religion? For example, like the paedophile gangs that you've had across the country. How many times do we see Muslim paedophile gang? Now, the other day there was an all-white paedophile gang that got caught. Now, there wasn't a headline Christian. Do you know what I mean? Christian paedophile gang grooming children, but whenever somebody, and sometimes I don't think they even actually check their religion. They just look at the colour and presume that they're Muslims, and it's put all over, you know, Muslim this, Muslim that.
But this is all part of a dehumanisation agenda, so that the Middle East can be controlled and subhumanised, isn't it? Into either slavery or trade or whatever way. It's made so that we do hate Muslim, so that they are the scapegoat. And like you said, the cover-up with the paedophile thing, it is actually really big, considering UK is the finance capital, and it's quite important to keep the UK in check. This is quite a big issue that's coming out. You know, if I don't believe anything will come out of Leon Britton, even though he's died, because they can't allow it to. Jimmy Savile was one thing, I think, you know, but when we start really letting snippets out, that's all it's going to be, snippets. So I think for this to blow out of proportion the way it is, you know, it's no secret that Philip was part of the Nazi, you know, there's a photo of it. It's no.
But then if you look at it, if you think, you know, history does teach us lessons.
Yeah. I mean, the point of it all is that if you look, I mean, if you look historically, as you said, you know, you've got the Nazis,
Where
Hitler.
it basically showed Diana's death, where it was like her.
Well, I mean, you've got, you know, historically, you've got all these kind of issues where you've got different regimes, like you've got the Nazis, or you've got post Russia, or any other places like that. I mean, you don't have to even go that extreme. I mean, America, for example, used the Red Invasion, used the communists as an excuse for the reason why their economy was collapsing back during the Cold War. We are now in an economic crisis. They need to make us turn our heads away from looking at the real problem, which is the financial collapse of society and the way that the richest in society have been not contributing at all. So they need us to look away from that. And what better way than targeting a religion that is primarily in people that live in a place that is completely and utterly dominated by oil, which is something we desperately need.
And that's the power of the media as well, isn't it? Because I broke up just then. I couldn't hear. It was all laggy. But I was going to say the unlawful killing with Diana. They did a poll to see who believed what the results were, and most people found it accidental. Because the press or paparazzi, because the press had released the fact that it was paparazzi and an accident, whereas it actually wasn't. It was actually unlawful killing due to surrounding vehicles. And that goes to show the power of the media when they really are in full force when something matters. And when it comes to terrorism, the whole Muslim agenda really, they hit it home absolute perfectly. You know, some of the comments on the Mirror or some of the posts, you find so many comments where people are like, oh, fucking Muslims again, oh, all this lot, and then you do actually see now, I've noticed the rise in people turning around and going, no, it's the government, no, it's this, no, it's that. And I have seen more of a rise of people actually defending what's right on there. Maybe that's why we're seeing more of a turn.
I think, you know, like looking at history, I often wondered how Hitler did what he did. You know, how he could kill so many people and create such hate for a certain group of people en masse, you know, because to a certain extent the country had to go along with it. And he did this for a long time before, because they were in a recession. He'd come out and he constantly blamed the Jews for everything. And after a while, the people start believing it and they start hating. And that's how he managed to get, you know, and it's just that same tactic again.
Is that famous quote of his, you know, where he says something along the lines of, if you say a lie long enough and you say it enough times, people make it the truth. And what you're saying is that the truth is nothing more than if 90% of people in a room believe something is true, then that suddenly becomes the truth, because anybody that goes against that is suddenly considered a lunatic. So, for example, at the moment, I don't know. I mean, the truth is that, for example, the Charlie Hebdo thing was done by Muslim extremists. That is the truth, partly because of what the media says, partly because everybody believes it, or everybody says that way. If you suddenly said something different and you potentially had facts about it, you'd still be considered a nutter, because the majority dominate what the truth is.
But this is where people.
That's what the Nazis did.
This is where people mess up with the difference between a belief and a knowledge. Do you know what I mean? I often say, if I say the word belief, I'm obviously not 100% sure about what I'm saying, because if I know something, I say I know it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that you're better off learning for yourself instead of just being told, going off, looking at things and getting knowledge on a subject rather than belief. Because somebody's told you that this has happened, you're just going to regurgitate what they say. That's what a belief is. And there is a lot of beliefs in this world and very little knowledge. People very rarely actually take the time to find out for themselves and gain a bit of knowledge.
Yeah, 100%, I 100% agree with that. And I mean, for example, you know, Bush did the same thing, where he consistently attacked, you know, he called it the axis of evil, the famous saying where he blamed them, and that's where it all started. You know, nobody really cared about Islam prior to the Bush sort of administration, the second Bush administration, where he effectively invented terrorism. You know, terrorism wasn't a word prior to that. You know, it didn't really exist. You were called, you know, the IRA and so forth were called insurgents. They weren't really referred to as, to such an extent, terrorists. The idea, this institution and this development of terrorism, and obviously with that came the industry where, you know, to buy and sell people's private data and cybersecurity and all these kind of things, all escalated from there. So it all started, and this is why I think it's so important for us to actually keep looking in the past, because the past gives you so many answers.
Well, when you look at past, if you take a look at the Muslim community now, and you know, especially with the whole burqa thing going on, oh, they shouldn't wear burqas. When you look at Queen Victoria, she wouldn't go out without her hair covered. Women's clothing had to be tightly around the neck. They had to be covered at all times. That was English, British values, British
what about that, the
ways of dressing.
That have to wear the triangle? Yeah. And Catholics, good Catholic women cover their heads before they go into a church.
Yeah.
But you see, all that is, I mean, I disagree with all religion, and the simple fact I believe religion is some organized religion anyway, is something that is outdated and is a method of control, you know, which is what it is. So you know, the thing about Islam is that it's not so much. I mean, the burqa thing is not. First of all, it's not really in the Quran, and any imam will tell you that. Secondly, the whole thing about the burqa is simply because you've got to also look at it in time differences, that those kind of societies, and this may sound incredibly wrong, but I think it's true, is that some countries are, it's almost like they're back in time. You know, it's almost like the time. If you look at Saudi Arabia, for example, women still can't drive, and they're considered second-class citizens. That's not the
we support Saudi Arabia, you know, and we support them, but they've always been like that.
They're still like that. We're stopping them from having a revolution, you know, because the West managed to advance the way they did because they didn't have anybody interfering. If we suddenly left the Middle East alone and completely isolated it, not touched it, didn't get involved, didn't use the oil, didn't give them any money, left them be, you'd see that those people the women would finally get education, there'll be a revolution, all the rich people in the world.
Some of these countries had that. We took that away. You go to
look at Afghanistan.
Afghanistan in the 70s, you know, they were leading in sciences and things like that, and women were dressing like they were in America. You know, this, like, the increase in burqas over in Afghanistan has been forced upon the people.
Yeah. Well,
because we created that.
And that shows that all the advancement that you have at the moment means nothing, because at one government's leisure, they can take all those rights away just like that. But what's also sad about the Middle East is if you don't even have to look, you can look even further back. During the Renaissance, for example, when we had people like the Pope, people like Catholicism, that were burning scientists, burning women if they could do maths properly, because they were witches, because women don't have the same brain as men, or what they used to think. The Middle East were inventing maths. They had the people that were they had people that were literate. They had schools, they had hospitals, they were advancing in medicine. You know, they were miles ahead of the West. It's just that we, at the time, always preferred wars. We kept fighting between each other. And eventually our advancements came in war, so therefore we managed to take them over. But if you look at it from a historical perspective, religion wasn't a big thing in the Middle East. It became so afterwards. As you said, because we funded religious groups, because religious groups knew how to control the people, because we needed them to be controlled so that we could extract the oil. And the most greedy individuals were the ones leading the religion, as they always are.
It is just creating more divides and shit. I mean, I to myself think this about religion. I think that they've probably all got quite a good message and be kind to one another. You know, in that way, they all tell stories relevant to, you know, their areas. You know, so it's probably, you know, they tell different stories to different people of what they probably need to hear. Because they've been written that way. They've been designed that way.
all forms of extremism and terrorism tend to run back to their governments anyway, don't they? To other governments, to our governments, to the corporations, to the people basically controlling with money and law. And that seems to be extremist in every value. It's like it's no different from Anonymous. Anonymous has, I'm sure, has its extremists in terms of you do have people who probably do want to go and do more than what the general protester wants to do because they're sick and tired and they've had enough. And that's no different from any other human being. There's only so much you can cope with. There's only so much you can take. And it does get you wondering where, say, like with Palestine, where a child of the age of 7 has not known anything but war. It makes you wonder how the West has created these people and how we ever thought this was going to be any different.
So what do you reckon to, is it Pope Francis, if I got his name wrong? The current Pope.
Francis, yeah.
Yeah. When he said, basically, we've done pretty bad things too. You know, let's not go pointing the finger about what religion's worse.
I think he's spinster's going, really, isn't it? Because you think the Catholic Church just built up on child abuse, isn't it? You know, he's like, yeah, let's just leave religions alone. You know, he's protecting himself with that.
Well, when the media grilled him on the Charlie Hebdo thing, he said that freedom of speech is important as long as it doesn't infringe on religious freedom.
Well, you see,
Go on.
I'm in two minds right now. I'm not a Muslim, so if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. It's offensive to depict the Prophet Muhammad, yeah? Always has been. Not a new thing. It's not something that ISIS have just made up. For thousands of years, it has been offensive to them to make an idol of the Prophet Muhammad. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's why they've got in a thing about it. I don't see why you would want to offend, you know, near enough 2 billion people, is it, that are Muslim, by doing something that is a few thousand-year-old tradition. It's not something that they've just made up recently. This is part of their religion. It's ingrained in the scriptures. You know, why would you? I mean, I like satire, so I'm not saying that it should be banned because, you know, ultimately it's free speech, but I don't see why they wanted to do it.
But you see, I mean, for me, it's I think everybody is in their right to criticize everybody's belief. If it's your belief, you should be proud.
But it wasn't criticising, was it? It was
making fun, taking the mick. I mean, either way, I don't think it's something wrong. I don't think it's wrong at all. I mean, it was for many countries. It was their tradition. So if a woman spoke in front of a man, it was for them to be beaten. Is that good tradition? Is that right? Because it's old.
No, but this is simple like a picture, isn't it? I mean, you with a Muslim comic, you could make a Muslim comic and make the same point just using a terrorist or a funny Muslim without using Muhammad. Is my point. I'm not saying it's any excuse to go and kill a load of people, because it's not, and I'm not saying it should be. You know, you haven't got the right to do that, because freedom of speech says you have got the right to do that if you want to. My thought is, why would you want to?
Well, I mean, why would you want to? I mean, it's a strange one, isn't it? Because why would you want to say anything? Because for the Charlie Hebdo, I mean, in the end, for them, obviously, they don't agree with religion at all. They think it's a religious practice. Which, to an extent, I do agree, because the fact that most religions are there strictly to make money. If you look at most imams and most priests, they're normally draped in gold, have millions and millions of dollars in the bank, and yet they're still begging for donations from their followers. Yeah. I think that is a criminal activity in itself.
I agree, like, that religions, organised religions, are quite profitable, but the people following them are, you know, they're the ones that get you know, offended because they're listening to their, you know, sermons and things and being told that they should be offended by it, and it's kind of ingrained into them.
Mm. But you see,
When you look at the whole terrorism and the whole religion thing as a collective, you wonder how far back that these corporations, countries, governments, whatever, realised that it was one of the best scapegoats ever. You know, for what
and methods of control.
Yeah, very much so. And I think it would have been in you know, the days of past. I think it would have been a massive, when people believed in it more, it would have worked a lot better on society. Now they're losing slip on it. I think they've had to take a new tact, which is terrorism.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I think satire is really good for the powerless to laugh at those with the power. You know, I think, and political figures and things like that. I think satires, I'm not saying it shouldn't ever take the piss out of religion. I'm just saying, if you know it's that offensive, why would you want to? But then again, you know, I see one that they did with, like a Brit woman and a Jew, and basically said, Britons and Jews, get out of Europe, or not wanted in Europe, or something like that.
but you see, I mean,
that's wrong.
for me, that's not, for me, I don't know, I think if we make that argument of why would you want to do it, I mean, why do most humans do anything? I don't think that is a discussion. I think the discussion would be, first of all, is that clearly that religion has way too much power if it can, first of all, get people to go and kill a journalist just because of the cartoon, which is exactly what it was. Secondly, I think that the problem here is education. Because if you look at the West, for example, the reason why religion has lost its grip is because we've become more educated. Women can go to school, men can go to school to a certain extent, you know, and we've got these abilities to actually educate ourselves to realize that actually these religions are not what they are. And civic society starts to come in, so we care about a human being, not because God told us to, but because we feel compassion with the next human being, or used to anyway, depending on our terrorism. But we have that compassion not because we're religious and because otherwise we go into the fiery pits of hell, but it's because that is what we feel is right, because we are human beings and we are one race. They don't have that in hyper-religious places. Like, for example, in south of the US, for instance, we can use Christianity as an example. In south of the US, they don't care about each other because of their human beings. Their ignorance and their religious belief says to them they have to care about their neighbor because otherwise God will smite them.
Yeah.
We had some, because Steve's got some relatives from Texas, good old Texas. and
oh, you're racist ones.
they were like, hey, we're bombing Syria, yay! And I was like, well, think of all the innocent lives. These are Christians. In fact, they run like a church.
But why? I mean, why say these are Christians? I don't think that makes sense.
Because of what I'm about to go on and say, you know, that they run a church. Do you know what I mean? They are you know, pastors or whatever they're called over there. I don't know, but they're highly like religious, and you think that when you say think of the children and things like that, they'd actually think, well, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be yaying, but they're not. No, the ragheads and this, that, and the other. And then Steve commented, and one of his cousins who didn't know what it was started going on about your sort.
Yeah. I just remember looking at that.
You'd shoot him in that, and it was like, what the fuck?
Do you know what? The thing is, with that, I can actually come from a more personal perspective, because believe it or not, I went to church for 2 years.
I went to church every Sunday growing up.
I was born a Catholic. I'm Italian, so I know what you mean.
Yeah, and I went to a Christian church, and it was really racist. It was really racist, and but they could say that they're not racist because it was against Muslim. But the way that they at one point, one of the pastor stood up and he said, I had to walk past a Muslim mosque today, and I asked God to be with me and keep me strong, and I had to breathe as I walked past. And I'm thinking, what are you portraying to these 3-4-year-olds that are sat in front of you, and you're sitting there talking about it? You know, that's a cult. Oh, and hi, Jar. Sorry.
But what's the
That's
difference
a
between a
cult.
cult and a religion? You know, it's just one's insulting because there's less people following it. One's obviously accepted by society and the powers that be. But one thing I never understood is that, you know, people always say religion of peace, religion of peace, religion of peace. I don't think that makes any sense in any of the religions, because all religious texts, you know, from the Bible to the Quran, always say that you should be aggressive or attack people that are non-believers or infidels. They say this openly. And if you're a religious person, you're genuinely religious, you believe that everybody that isn't part of your religion goes to hell. So how could you possibly, therefore, in that mindset, be a good person and allow that person to believe what they believe? If you genuinely believe that that person is going to go and burn in the fire of eternal damnation.
Some of the members of the church actually used to plague them. There was this one woman, and her son was a tearaway, and it used to plague her, and I'm sure the stress will eventually cause some kind of physical illness as well when you get to that point. She really was convinced her son was going to hell because he hadn't accepted God into his life.
But you see, I mean, that's the problem, is that no religion is peaceful in itself. They can't be. They're in constant war with every other belief system in the world because they believe that their belief system is infallible. And the only reason why Christians aren't doing the exact same thing as Muslim extremists is because Christians, if you are told you must go and do something in the name of God and Jesus, you'd be laughed at because nobody actually is religious anymore in a lot of the Western world. You know, people say
but we used
to go to church for something to do on a Sunday because that's the only time they get to communicate with people, and it's a bit of a thing and it's a social event. But nobody really genuinely believes that. Otherwise, you'd go around and you'd go and kill somebody that says something about Jesus, because that's what the Bible tells you to do.
Well, we used to kill Catholics in this country.
Huh?
We used to kill Catholics in this country in some barbaric ways. We used to put great big doors on them and put stones on them until they were crushed to death.
Is that used to happen because people
really.
That is people believing in religion. That is true religious people. That is religion when it actually genuinely has power in society. In the Western world at the moment, religion doesn't have power. The Catholic Church does, but that's because it has money, not because it has beliefs.
When I was at school, the thing that they used to hate me because they didn't like me because I used to debate things with them. And they used to say that if you're not, you're bad, you go to hell. But then they used to say, like, God forgives everything. So I used to always be like, well, if God forgives everything, how come he sends you to hell? If he's all forgiving and everything, how come we're off to hell? And for ages, they couldn't answer it.
It doesn't make sense. All you've got to do is scratch a little bit, and then you realise that all their belief systems don't make sense.
And it's like, my God's a jealous God, I think is something that God's a jealous God or something that's in the Bible. And I you're telling me that this all, the knowing all being miraculous being has traits of jealousy.
Human.
Do you know that you might like somebody else instead of unity? Yeah. I just find that and the externalization of God and spirit and that as well.
It really does make you realise it's just a load of bullshit, doesn't it?
Well, it is bullshit. I mean, somebody somewhere invented it.
I realised it was bullshit when I used to go and count the money with my foster dad, and I'm there counting money, and one of them was a homeless bloke that used to come in and give money every week, and we're counting all the money. And in a great big mansion, and then they've got a big monastery, and the school was the old monastery. So I'm looking at all these buildings and the priest's brand new car, and I'm thinking, where's this money going? How come you aren't sacrificing a bit? There's people stuff.
They genuinely believe in, but then again, that's not even true. I was about to say, if you genuinely believed in their religion, then you would fight. Then you would eventually bankrupt yourself by giving stuff to the poor.
Yeah.
It never says anything about giving stuff to the poor. It talks about taking money for the benefit of the church, and that's what we've been doing for generations. All this stuff about being good and being careful is for everybody that follows. As long as you do things for the good, it's like. And the other thing, of course, about religions is that they're formed in different ways, which I think is the reason why Islam is so misunderstood. Is that if you think about it, when Christianity was formed, or depending on when it was formed, depending if you believe that the Roman when the Roman Empire turned Christian, that's when it was formed, or if when Jesus was around, that's when it was formed. It really depends. But if you think about it, Jesus was a revolutionary. He didn't want to be ruled by Rome. He was fighting against it, and he got crucified for it. Muhammad, on the other hand, he saw a belief system in the Western world that was uniting European countries because they were all uniting under the banner of Christendom, and the Islamic states were fighting against each other, or rather the Arab states were fighting against each other, and there was no defense. For if the Europeans came down, which they eventually did, to take back Jerusalem, or to take Jerusalem rather, so they saw that as a belief system that they needed to implement to make themselves a united defense front, which is what Islam developed out of war, in effect, because they were warring against the Western world, which is why Islam is inherently slightly more aggressive, because it was developed in times of war. Whereas Christianity is
so what about
the
way that Saudi Arabia conducts itself, and the difference between ISIS, when you see that Saudi has been pretty brutal and uncivilized with, you know, things, what path would you take? Because when you look at it, you can plug to the public and say, I don't know what you're getting worked up about, Saudi's been doing it for years. Is that really a good thing? Because then we're equally attacking a Muslim religion. So how do you get through to these people by, you know, saying, look, guys, this is all just a load of shit. It's a load of shit.
But I think
the majority of it is not the religion, it's the personal circumstances of different groups of people and what they're fighting against. And it's all put down under the banner of Muslims or whatever, but it's not. Like Saudi Arabia, it's about dictatorship and control and
yeah,
that's it. It's got fuck all to do with being a Muslim.
But you see, I think we're in a very, very special place at the moment because we are in a position where we can finally, I mean, I think we do need to be angry for a lot of things, but with this issue of religion, I think we have the ability and we have the duty to be angry not at Islam but at all religions, because religions have been taking the ordinary person for an absolute ride. You're giving money to these people that are incredibly wealthy. And the
but is that not the initial? Is that not the initial? I saw a documentary. Not that I pay as much interest into New World Order, because I believe it is a whole load of different corporations, and I don't believe it's just one, like under one sort of system. I feel it is. I don't believe two corporations plot against us. I believe they equally plot against each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a web, but there was a statement on there that said that in the last few years of this plan that a religion would be eradicated. Would they not want to hold on to religion so that they still have that control?
But I mean, it would make sense. I mean, of course, it would make sense to have that control. I mean, why would they want to eradicate religion?
It would take decades.
Of
You
course.
think how ingrained it is into families and things like that. But that's the thing with religion. You know, I think teach a little bit of maybe the morals, not from like across the board, but keep actual religions out of the classroom and churches until kids are old enough to make up their own minds. I think because you're only what your parents are.
Yeah. I mean,
there's
any of that. I mean, the fact that we've still got religious education in this country is an absolute joke, as you said.
Yeah.
But the thing about Islam is that, I mean, religion, sorry, is that you've got, I mean, the whole of the Middle East, for instance, is being controlled by a religion, in the sense that the reason why the Saudi government can still stay in power is American money, first of all, or rather Western money, and secondly, because their people have no education but are being indoctrinated into religion and to Islam at a very, very early age.
See, as to why they would want to get rid of religion, because to a certain extent they don't need it anymore, because money controls us, because they control absolutely everything. You know, you can't get land, you can't get house without money, whether it be for rent or some, you know, unless you're willing to live as a homeless person. There was you know, you don't have that a lot of options.
I mean, that is actually something that I haven't thought about, because obviously, I mean, it's an outdated version of control. They just simply don't need it anymore because they've got other better methods. Because money effectively controls everything in your life.
Money is a new religion. People worship it. People who do anything for it, and people believe in it. They believe it will make their lives better. Money does everything that religion set out to do, except you'll die without it.
You won't die without religion. Religion is about smoke and mirrors. Money, to an extent, does actually control your life in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know, it is very much real in a sense. Whereas religion, if you suddenly start believing in Jesus, you know, you're not going to get burned. You don't want to die from it. It is what it is.
Well, it depends. It depends who you admit that to, doesn't it?
Well, exactly.
Like whack jobs.
I mean, the other thing, of course, is that
learning used to be a part of British values.
I don't know if they actually don't need it anymore. I don't know if I agree with that, because you think about it, in the Western world, they may not need that because it controls us with money. But if you think about, for example, most of Africa, where most of our resources come from, you know, most of our gold, diamonds, wood, etc., all come from Africa and play in what we used to call third world countries now. The majority of those workers work for $1 a day. Why do they work for $1 a day? Partly coercion, because otherwise they get shot, but mainly because they believe that they're going to get a better life in the afterlife. Now, if they all suddenly didn't believe in religion, first of all, it wouldn't be mass suicide, because they know that they can't go anywhere. So they would all be mass revolting because they've got absolutely nothing to lose. The problem is that right now, even if you're working for $1 a day in Africa in a copper mine, you've still got something to lose, because they think that if you don't do that, you lose your eternal soul. And that's again the idea of manipulation of the Christian religion, which has been there since colonial times. Now, a lot of it, I think, they don't control us with religion anymore, but for me, they control the rest of the world, and actually where most of their industries are, with religion. So I think religion actually controls a lot more than we care to think.
Of course it does. A lot.
Yeah, it's shocking.
I was reading an interesting article about like Africa and that. It was about famine, and how a lot of it was to do with having to feed and keep livestock for the West.
Mm-hmm.
So where we were seeing like these starved people when the famines were on in the 80s, there was actually fields of food and shit, but they couldn't touch it because it was going to be made for grain for keeping cows alive in the West.
God, it's a bit of a joke, isn't it?
Well, it is.
It's sad.
It still goes on. You know, the amount of meat we do eat, really, they have to get the grain from somewhere, and the quotas for the agriculture, you know, for the animals, take precedent. They can't, you know, they'd let people starve to make sure that America can feed its cows rather than feed its people. It's disgusting.
It's wrong. It's wrong because when you look at it, it's demoralising. It goes back to the subhumanisation and the whole making people. You know, do you think you see these videos and TV advertisements showing skinny kids and it's like they're asking for water? And I read one article where there was the army or their army or some form of army, I don't know exactly who, had gone around destroying all their wells. And it's to a point where if we actually knew, you know, you've got people going, oh, we've been fucking paying to them for years. Yeah, and our armed forces and the West has been destroying them for years.
But
Do you know what I mean?
the problem with them is that they build these wells and then they move and they go somewhere else and build the wells, and either the corrupt police and army will take over the wells, or organised gangs will take over the wells, and you will have to pay to use the well.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
it's never going to stay there. The point is that you need to build the infrastructure for them to have a democratic society. Because building random wells everywhere is not going to do anything. You're just giving these gangs a better way of making money.
Surely the better way is to, you know, like, you can get them live straws and things like that, where you actually give them a way to clean the water near them, so that they can go and get their own water from wherever and just purify it somehow.
Well, those straws do purify it anyway, don't they?
Yeah, they do tanks as well, don't they?
Yeah, 500,000 gallons mine does before it runs out.
And there's one that does a million gallons before it runs out.
1 million gallons?
Yeah, it's a filter. You can either get a straw where you could just use it, or it's like a filter system. You know, for when you're camping and that.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's
and
amazing.
I just think, you know, but there must be better ways. How hard is it to clean water? You know, we do it. I mean,
all the time,
yeah.
Like you said though, so it's the gangs, it's the governments, it's the rebels. You know, it's people not wanting these to thrive, because them thriving would mean that, you know, it would be a loss of control to them, and it's all the. You give them some power over their democracy, and we no longer have diamonds.
The
and
power
that's
is
down to.
It's the. Oh, I've lost my train of thought. It's I was waiting to put in. Fuck it, I can't remember.
I'm gonna put pressure on. Come on. What
Come
was
on,
it?
can't remember. But yeah, it's capitalism. That was it. Is that, you know, the people like that, say the mafia gangs, they have to make money. That everything, you know, there is no money. There's no. It's all slave labour and fucking shit over there. The pressure of capitalism means that everything is a commodity, and everything can be turned into a way to make money, and there will always be vultures that will utilise that.
Yeah, always.
You know, if you don't think of it first, somebody else will.
But that's capitalist society. I mean, you can't have that kind of a society. But if money wasn't the main aim, but it was the advantage of oneself, or a moneyless society where every invention was at the benefit of everybody, then everybody would be making something to make a name for themselves that will then benefit the rest of society, the rest of humanity.
And I think
we're benefiting our pockets. So
that could have a knock-on effect of us not having to own everything, and which could, you know, sometimes I wonder if half of the racial hate and the borders and everything is because we need to own and belong to England or America or wherever we're born. You know, maybe in time, in a society where we didn't have the pressures of money and the need to own everything, where everything was just accessible, we'd lose that.
I think so. I definitely think so. It's the idea of, I mean, if you look at, for example, Africa, the problem with Africa at the moment is that when we left, you know, when we decolonized, you look at Africa and you all these straight line borders, which is bizarre because no country should look like that. If Africa was formed via the tribes, like the Western world was, you know, where Britain formed because it was originally a tribe and then it grew into a nation, Africa would look completely different. So now you've got tribes that are divided between two countries, fighting because they want to be unified, and the people at the top in that country don't want to give any of that land up because they see it as giving up power. So there's this endless sort of fight between the tribes that want to be geographically united. And then you've got the leaders of the countries that say, well, Libya's fine the way it is because that's, you know, we've got all the oil where we want it, we've got this to where we want it, so we don't want to give up anything. So I think it's very...
when that terrorist attack in Paris happened, was it Nigeria that all those people were killed?
Yeah.
Well, the Boko Haram one in Nigeria.
That was horrific. You know, yeah, but it was barely covered. I didn't see it much on the mainstream.
But it doesn't follow their agenda, does it? It doesn't follow what they. It makes no difference to their operations in Nigeria. Whereas the Je suis Charlie makes a massive difference to people's consciences based on terrorism. It leads totally back to where it needs to go. Rupert Murdoch must have been coming in his pants the minute that happened, whether he instrumented it or not. Do you know what I mean? Even if it was something that's created through cause and effect, I do believe that he would have been totally going over the edge with that one.
Talking of him,
I mean, what's it called? He said something about Muslims need to be carted off or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, stupidity at its finest, but he controls most of the mainstream press. So isn't it a surprise that the Sun and the whatever else is racist, as well as obviously xenophobic, as well as obviously Islamophobic, and all these other things? No, not really, considering that their owner is.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
And none of this is really shocking.
No, well, the thing is, I think it is, because it's not shocking to us because we've got to a point where we're just tired of it. We've had enough. Nothing can really shock us anymore because we know what they're capable of, and we know they're capable of far worse than what they've already done. We know there's still a lot to come if we keep allowing it. But I do believe it is ultimately going to be really shocking to Joe Bloggs and Jane Doe. Do you know what I mean? I think it's going to be really shocking for them. It's going to be a real hard wake-up call to realise that your safety net, which is the government, because that's what they've done, they've created themselves as a safety net so that people feel good because the government will look after them. I can lose my house because the government looks after them, but it's not in the media, the fact that no, they're not looking after you anymore. Do you know what I mean? People are still under the illusion that anything can happen to them and their government's got their back. And that to them is more important than, you know, they'd need ultimate proof to get any further than this. But I really, really do believe that a lot of people are going to need a lot of therapy. There's probably going to be a hell of a lot of suicides, and there's going to be some serious deranged shit going on if it is all brought out to the public. Then people aren't going to be able to cope with that shit, man.
I don't think they will. I think a lot of
people have therapy for Take That splitting up. One Direction, do you know what I mean? One Direction split up. You watch therapy hotlines, and the lines for sad teenagers is going to be bang on there again. These people with a boy band splitting up, let alone the whole of their whole dreams and aspirations and thoughts on how the planet exists and works. It's just fucking shit.
That's sadness, and I think people will be a lot more angry. You know, they when they realise that the shit is going to hit the fan and the NHS is gone and they are going to frack regardless of what you think, and interest rates go up and people start losing their homes and there's more homeless people, that's when people start to get angry. Because at the moment...
that's probably what a lot of people say as well, is that it's like Mark said, people only start marching when they've got absolutely nothing left to lose, and at the moment people have still got too much to lose, I think.
I mean, I personally think it should have happened when the 10,000 sick and disabled died in 2010, but it didn't. And the reason I think that that's different is because they physically weren't able to.
No, I think
they're sick and disabled people.
Build up ready for that, because if you remember 2 to 3 years before they started doing these cuts, even on the street, in the playground, there was little rumours like, oh, these people creating these people on DLA, and all the stories in the newspaper of people with bad backs and getting in their car with shopping bags and having donkey rides on the beach. Do you know what I mean? They've set this up perfectly years before they've actually executed it. People do not give a shit about people on DLA because they've stereotyped them into a category where they are benefit cheats. They're not really disabled. They don't really need that. Forget the people with no limbs or people dying of terminal cancer. They have categorised them into benefit cheating liars.
What happened was they tarred everyone with the same brush.
Yeah, they did.
Like they always do. I mean, they do this all the time.
I'll tell you now, right, point blankly, I know people that have given their children Rohypnol and other sedatives to fail medicals to get disabled living allowance. But I equally know people that have really sick and disabled people, children that not just caring for 24 hours a day, and they need respite and things like that. There are people, and the majority really do need, their lives depend on this money, and to be able to go out to the park, to be able to take their kids to school, they need mobility and things like that. But there was some people that did take the piss.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they, instead of they started tiring everyone, their Atos, which got absolutely ridiculous, where you could bang a button with your nose and you was fit for work.
But doesn't that
and
run
talking about that, they've kind of got a great big one, because I can't remember her name, but some woman who was campaigning against this, she's just been given a job with Maximus, hasn't she, for 75,000 a year. She was a blogger. Now, lots of people who are really, ill and struggling to get about and suffering at the hands of Atos contacted her for help, and she's now sold out and gone to work for the opposition for 75,000 a year, despite the fact that she was supposed to be badly disabled and unable to work. That's why she'd set up this whole protest and thing.
I mean, that's a very, very simple case of, it's better to have the enemies pissing inside a tent than them pissing out the tent. That's that standard political saying, where they would rather have people inside their organisation so they can control them. Because what's probably going to happen to her is that she's got the job for a couple of years. Once her followership has died down, she's now hated by the people she was worshipped by.
Yeah, they hate.
And then she'll get fired by them and say, okay, well, good luck, because she's got no power anymore.
Well, it happened in the same way with rape claims, where rapes were actually looked at as being, oh, she's crying rape again. There was a lot of false rape claims on the go. Women did give it a bad name up to a point where there was a couple that came out and it was actually false. And they've done exactly the same. They've used the media to focus on those people, so that when a woman does cry rape now, the court cases are so enduring and so scary that a lot of women won't go through it. And this has happened because of exactly what they've done to the disabled. They've scapegoated them, they've stereotyped them, and they've categorised them. And the general public really are dumbed down. I think the fluoride, whether anyone wants to believe it or not, is really working, because people seriously have not got a clue how bad shit is. And the fact that what happens when it's not until someone's daughter gets raped, or someone's little boy gets stolen by social services, or somebody loses a limb in a car crash and then realises, shit, I've been calling them benefit scroungers all this time and now I've got to go through all that. And it's not until it actually happens to these goddamn people that they realise what's going on. They've got absolutely no empathy for anyone anymore.
I think Atos is designed to fail, because anybody it catches, I think, is probably a genuine case. Because just going in on a test, if you are fraudulently claiming, you are going to try and not be able to do as much as possible. Whereas an actual genuine disabled person is going to go in there and try and do as much as they possibly can, they physically can, to show what they can do and what they can't do. So most of the people that probably got, taken off benefits were actually genuine cases. I reckon, because they just on the whole medical thing, the mindset would have been completely different. A disabled person would want to show what they can do, because they'd want a job that suited them.
They've always had to struggle to be equal, and now they're almost being told, well, come on, tell us your worst.
But you see, I mean, for me, it's always a case, and the fluoride thing is one thing or another, but I don't think it has to even go to that extent. I mean, the way the media writes, for example, you look at a newspaper a couple of generations ago, and you look at an academic paper compared to now. You look at school books now. People that were doing the same things at O level back in the day. Those kind of things you study at university now.
Yeah.
So people are becoming more, are being dumbed down. You can
call it
whatever it is, but
some of the literature in primary school, you've got like Horrid Henry on some of the bookshelves. Now, I don't know, right? I don't have a TV in my house for viewing, as in TV. They watch DVDs. They are allowed to watch things on Netflix. They're allowed certain things. My kids are monitored with what they watch at a young age. Horrid Henry was something they weren't allowed to watch because of the whole. Just seeing it, Tracy Beaker as well, it was just something they weren't allowed to watch because of the attitudes of the children. And I noticed a lot of children going around at that point, and I was really pleased that my kids had no idea what was going on. And the whole whatever, you know, speaking to their parents in that term and ways like that, they've almost made it so that it's cool for a kid to act like a dickhead. And
I think they just deny that we didn't act like that.
Huh?
I think we just deny that we didn't act like that.
Exactly.
We did. Yeah. But I didn't watch telly. I was allowed to watch Countdown and that was it. But, you know, I still thought...
Blockbusters,
Blockbusters, oh yeah, Blockbusters. It's a Please Bob.
Yeah. I'm so worried about our childhood now because you think it was Rolf Harris, Heart to Heart. Then you had Jim Will Fix It. You had what was the other paedophiles? I'm not sure about Blue Peter. I really am not sure about Blue Peter now. You know, it's like all that sticky back plastic and shit like that. Our childhood I think it was quite good, but the generation is proving to be good now, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think when, you know, like when you're a kid and you hear a word for the first time, like high fives when that first comes about and you think you invented it and you go around doing it all the time, I think kids are always going to be like that, a bit annoying, a bit stupid and get like obsessed with it.
They're using it to their advantage because a lot of these children's TV programs focus on children rebelling against their parents.
Well, actually, no. Tracy Beaker was in a children's home. She was and I think the author was in a children's home, and I think she was actually a brilliant program for children who were growing up in children's home because there was no other program on telly that reflected their lives.
I thought that was quite a good program. A lot of people found out about social services.
Yeah, they did. I didn't like the attitude. I have to admit, I didn't.
But that's what it is like in a children's home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
See, my kids take sayings on full force to the point if they see a wedgie on TV, guaranteed I cannot walk past them in a hallway. There is no way they're watching anything where they're cream pieing me in the face, where they're throwing water balloons on my head, when they're fucking digging holes in the garden to trip me up. None of that shit. I ain't having none of that shit.
I think it's more self-preservation.
Damn right it is. There's no way.
I'm just an idiot. I fill up water bombs and just walk into the front room and throw them at them.
Yeah.
Indoor snowball fights when it's too cold to go outside. That's how childhood should be.
When they gang up, it's absolutely crazy. But no, I just think with parents, they should watch more of what their kids are watching, and I love Finding Nemo and shit like that, and I like a good film. You know, you sit down and watch Monsters Inc. and stuff, but there is indoctrination in everything, and the problem I found with things like these films and these series and episodes, a lot of kids were like, "Oh, I'm running away," and stuff like that. You know, and it gives them ideas. They've got little developing brains at that time, and the control that my daughter seriously has some awesome amount of control over me, an awesome amount, and she will use all tactics to gain any kind of leeway with me. And the problem with that is what happens when they get hurt, when they copy one of these things off of these programs and stuff. We never had this amount of TV when we were younger.
Yeah, but let's not be naive. You know, we went off on great big long walks over fields to the middle of nowhere and had picnics. I used to skate out like 4 miles out of town. You know, and stuff like that. We had a freedom that kids nowadays don't have.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah,
you wouldn't let them out.
You're doing that now, and your mother will probably call the police.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
dogs after you. So it doesn't. I think it's touch and go on both sides. But
I
I
think that
we
the
can all
thing I
agree, for
hate.
example, the whole thing that David Cameron was saying about protect the children, which was a couple of years ago, I think now, about stopping children from stumbling upon pornography. I mean, I think that was absolutely laughable. You know, that Google and all these kind of companies openly give you for free, parenting software to just all you got to do is install it on the computer and it does the rest for you.
And most broadband providers.
And broadband. So I mean, there is so much that parents can do at the click of a finger to stop your kids accidentally stumbling on porn.
Well, to be honest, under a certain age, you would be monitoring them anyway on the internet, wouldn't you? It's only when they get to an age where you feel they're consciously able to search the web without downloading some crappy spam onto your hard drive that totally wipes your disk clean and makes it so you can't go. P knows this one as well. It makes it so you can't use your own computer. And you have to look after them anyway, because they're not responsible enough to navigate the internet without destroying the computer and going into territories that they don't know safe, you know. So responsible parents do tend to watch their children anyway, and the ones that don't watch their children, it should be safeguarding them that they're more interested in. And you're not going to do that by controlling the internet as a global thing. It's more getting back to the community and teaching parents, you know, how to do things better.
Exactly.
And showing them ways.
If David Cameron wanted to save
laziness
children,
from the parents' point of view, I think, considering it's.
If David Cameron wanted to save the children, he would have stopped the advertising in kids' programs.
Yeah.
Because they put loads of adverts on for loads of, loads of crap that kids shouldn't really have and stuff like that. But then they stick the Wonga loans on him, or the finance things that make it look like you can just get money growing on trees, so that they put on pester power and on online, not have adverts aimed at children on children's sites.
Yeah. You suddenly go on any sort of what's it called Disney site or anything, and suddenly you want half of the store.
Yeah. Yeah, he has no real want to change. If he wanted...
You still there?
Showing signs that they can't cope, and a child is starting to look... There should be services there for a parent to be able to go to get help for these things. There should be advocacies and groups. If a parent is struggling, social services shouldn't come and take the children away. Social services should come and say, do you need some help? What can we do for you to make this better? Not, right, we're taking your child and selling them to a rich family.
Yeah.
They should be with you. I mean, the way I see it is that social services should be that group of people that come to you at your time of need. That shouldn't be there saying, what have you done to your child? You're a terrible parent.
Everybody
saying, okay, what do you need? Like, what's the problem? What's going on? And then if it is the parent that's the problem, then they should act upon that and probably, potentially remove the child. But that should be the last thing on their mind. They should try and do as much as possible to work. But you see, the problem with that is, again, it's always been the media. Because stories like Baby P, for example, made the social services look like complete crap. So then they've tried to take a hardline approach on things, which you can't do. I mean, it doesn't work like that. You can't just suddenly switch from doing fuck all to suddenly.
Yeah, but even with Baby P, what they did is they focused on stupid little nitpicking cases. Every parent someday gets something wrong. We are people. We're not perfect. Don't go by going after these petty things. They're ignoring the big ones, because the big cases, these people are aware that they're doing this wrong and they're covering their tracks. They're attempting to hide it. A woman who maybe, I don't know, pulls her child at the school or something in a bit of an aggressive way, hasn't done it like behind closed doors, has done it quite open. Obviously isn't trying to hide her character. Maybe work with some people, because when you're actually rescuing them, if you had rescued baby P, the system that we have in place would have destroyed him. Even if we'd have managed, there is, you know, you've got to rebuild these people that you're rescuing, and you've got to protect them from further damage. Otherwise, say like you go to a house that's a bit dirty, and you take the kids away because it's dirty, right? And then they go into care, and they're abused, which, you know, there's a high abuse rate for people, children in care, either physically or sexually. So that, you know, that is worse. Not only have they been ripped, because when they're taken away from their family, that's a grief. Do you know what I mean? That's like their whole family's died, because they'll probably get to see them sporadically if social services let them. If they don't, they might be put up for forced adoption. You know, so that's a whole family grief that child has to go through as well. Because a child, even if they're abused, probably still loves their parent. It's an unhealthy love, and it needs to be addressed, but they are still going to have that
attachment,
loss
of course.
of that attachment. So it's the whole system just really needs ripping out.
Yeah, it does. It
needs
needs to go back. It needs to go to square one. And to be honest, the best way for it to start as well is within the community, because if it is so drastic to a point where the child does need to be removed from the person's care, that it is so important to keep things like the schools the same, primary schools, secondary schools, areas, family near them the same, visits the same, that kind of thing. And yeah, and work it out as a community, which is what we've lost. You know, we should be having these services up and running ourselves somehow, but the laws stop us from doing that. This is why I feel that the social care is going to be one of the last battles that we are fighting, because we can't just, we can home educate, and we can start up home education networks. We can show people that it can be done. We can set up groups, schooling groups. We can set up shops, and we can set up services to help old people, blah, blah. We cannot right now set up anything to help children, because we are just literally entangled in web where we cannot help any children. It is, their lives are dependent on social services. And like P said, we all make mistakes. When I had my first moment of realization that my children weren't mine, they belonged to the crown, which they do, was when I had gone to the school and I'd fallen out with somebody, and she'd called social services, and I was like, I was quite young, and I was quite, yeah, what are you going to do about it? Go away. Do you know what I mean? I had no care in the world whatsoever. And then I just started realising the magnitude of who they were. And they'd written it off. They were like, yeah, she's, you know, fine, whatever. And then Ellie had picked up a bowl of noodles. And I was like, right, noodles. You think, right, okay, they're old enough. Let's give noodles a shot. You don't think about it sometimes. You really don't. And she grabbed the bowl, she brought it forward, and she dropped the bowl, and it tipped on her, and it went down her stomach. And I quickly ran her upstairs, put the shower head on her. The first thought that went through my mind was, they're going to take her away from me. And that was an accident. That was me trying to give her some independence and say, yeah, come on then, let's do this, because she'd made a cup of tea, she'd done a couple of little things, and you have to do these things to get them independent. And it frightened the shit out of me, and it made me realise these kids do not belong to me. They belong to the crown, because the minute they want my children, they can have them.
See, my daughter, she broke her arm about 3 times in a row, and by the 3rd time they wouldn't let me anywhere near her, which to my daughter, if you ever met her, was absolutely devastating. Because
she's so shy, really shy.
she's an introvert. She doesn't like being around people, and so she had to go in the examination room on her own. And I understand that they have to check that it's, you know, not parents, but she's got hypermobility, which makes her bones more prone to fracture, and she was skating, and she just kept going down on the same arm. But it was, you know, I wasn't allowed nowhere near, and it doesn't matter how much you protest or say, you know, but she isn't going to like this. If you get like that, you become a pushy parent, and you get labelled, and you get shit for that as well.
Parent wouldn't allow services
Yeah.
to freely speak with child, blah blah blah. Eye contact was minimal. The things that they write in their reports are ludicrous. They will try anything, and the minute, if I ever get a knock at my door from social services, the first thing I'd do is I will let you in when I get a solicitor. There is no way I would let them anywhere near me or my children ever again, even though I have to admit last year I heckled them to a point where my son isn't getting what he needs for his disabilities, right? And it got to a point where social services does not want any contact with me anymore because they won't help. They physically will not help. Now, this is a child in need in my eyes. All right, I'm doing my best as a parent, but I'm not getting anywhere with the services. So my idea is social services is supposed to help children in need. I have a child in need. They just totally don't answer the phone anymore. It's like, maybe people need to ring them more and tell them their problems because it worked for me.
Well, you see, that's the thing, is that if they weren't so menacing, if they weren't acting the way they were, and if they were, I mean, when they're meant to help, they don't. I mean, the problem of it is like with a lot of services. I mean, if you look at the NHS, it's another thing. The NHS is not in the shit because it's owned by the government. It will not be better if it's privatized. The problem with the NHS is simply admin. Like with most British institutions, the problem is admin. You've got people in the job that, first of all, are most probably power hungry, probably feel the fact that they've got power over somebody or something, and therefore they abuse that power. There needs to be more checks and balances. You know, we're in a country where we are horribly nepotistic. You know, we've got parties that put people in government not because of their ability, but because of who their parents are or how much money they have. So if the country's not going to run well if that's the basis of our society. I mean, the most British value is giving your job or giving that job to somebody you know. That's British values in my eyes.
I see a newspaper report about NHS like top dogs getting like 100,000 bonuses and that.
100,000 what?
Bonuses. Can't remember the exact figure. But you know, everything else going to pot, but they're getting fucking bonuses. And I bet that was for private, the bits that they've privatised. It's just messed up. I mean, it's also the cuts, you know, because you've cut like the help available to sick and disabled and carers allowance and things like that. They can't send people home if there's no one to look after them when they obviously need looking after. They need to sort out the carers a bit better.
Yeah, they do. And then what someone's said as well, one of the Wave has just said, they need the people like the children, disabled, the more mature. I haven't found a word that I like to describe the elderly. They need us to stand up for them, because they're not always capable of standing up for themselves, and it takes us, the community, the people, to stand together for them. So anyone who, you know, I understand standing against the government's also important, standing against the cuts, standing against this, standing against that, everything is, but to be honest, we need to be out on the streets all the time, constantly.
I agree.
I mean, going back to social services, I was having...
Well, not just standing outside on the street, just doing whatever it is that you do.
Yeah. No, I don't mean just standing there. No, I mean, like, you know, advocating for things, starting new
social media, online, protesting on the streets, doing sit-ins, reporting on stuff. Whatever that thing that you do is.
Do it.
And I was having a chat with my neighbour today, and she's supposed to have gone in for an operation, but it got cancelled. Now, she's been to social services to get help with her son that's disabled, he's got autism. And because she had to get someone to look after the kids while she went into hospital, because it got cancelled, she had to rearrange it. But because she's got social services involved because of the autism, they've said to her that he can only go to where they say, and they have to approve it.
Right.
And I was like, what the fuck? This is
Well, they
somebody
own
who's-
your kids. They own
This is-
our kids. There's
this is
no doubt
somebody-
about that.
whose children are not under threat to be taken off us. She's never had any, you know, like dealings with social services like that. In fact, her mum works for social services, I think, over somewhere else. But when she has to rebook her thing, her daughter, who's over 16, can go anywhere. She could come around here. But her son, they have to approve. And furthermore, she has to send him there 2 days a week to be looked after.
Why?
For respite.
Why?
Respite.
No, as in, but why? Why?
Yeah, but I don't know why they have to choose them.
Yeah.
It's probably money somewhere along the line.
Oh, I'm sure, like everything in society.
It was,
I've never
Jars,
heard
but
anything
they're
so
ruled,
bizarre.
but they're owned by G4S and Serco, haven't they? Jars just put it. That they're,
Well, so are
they're
the
Well, that's the thing, you know, like-
unemployment centres are now run by G4S.
Oh, and there was that bloody
Mm.
UKIP politician who wants benefit claimants to have their driving licences taken off them. Right? Now, how's that going to help with widening the job search?
It's not. It's just going to piss them off more.
What if you've only lost your job for a couple of weeks?
What if you're a claimant for benefits for things like caring for your children who are disabled and you need to take them to important hospital visits?
But after that, I mean, what's the point? It's like, just because you don't have a job, suddenly I'm going to punish you with something. It's not. It doesn't even make sense. It's just like,
Beat you with a stick.
found a job that they needed a car to get to, or they needed a car for that work. Sorry, the government took my driving license away. They're going to be unemployed more so because the government.
Why don't you just have like unemployed carriages on trains and unemployed lanes on the motorway? Unemployed areas of town. We just completely segregate them.
I love you.
Well, that's if UKIP come to power. That's what. And a lot of what's sad about UKIP is a lot of their votes come from unemployed white British people.
Mm.
I mean, it's almost the equivalent of if Jewish people voted for the Nazis.
I don't
Yeah.
actually think UKIP are going to do that well in this election. Everybody
Yeah, because
seems.
it's first past the post. Because
Yeah,
of the voting system. Neither are the Greens, though.
But Greens have now overtook Lib Dems as well as UKIP.
Yeah, but that doesn't really make that much. I mean, that is great and
It
amazing.
makes the difference in it puts them on an even better par with membership fees to have a bit more money for campaigns.
Not only that, it also makes people more thinking, oh, hang on, maybe my vote will count.
True, but what also I think needs to be understood is that why the hell aren't they including the Greens in the debates? Speaking of which, we can safely say, ShoutOutUK, we're the first British news organisation to ever include the Greens in a debate.
Yay!
Yeah, well done.
First ever one to have all 5 main parties voting for it. Well, debating on it on the 26th of March. Doing a bit of a
Good. That would be good. I'd like to see that. I would really like to see that because a lot of the green policies are very activist style, new age. They are actually realising what is going on. Not all of them. They're not perfect, just like other, you know, but the Greens have always stuck to kind of. It's going to be nice for them to be able to turn around to people and say, we are not expecting you to live in mud huts made of poo.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
we
think
We are not going to high tax petrol to the point where you can't drive your car.
I mean,
We
that's a lot of the problem with the Greens. Is their PR is terrible. Like, I mean, calling themselves the Greens was probably a mistake in the first place because that automatically assumes tree hugger and then various other things. You know, policies that can't work, you don't have to run an economy, blah, 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 etc. Which is not true at all. Some of the Green policies make a lot of sense. In fact, they're probably the most smart-talking party at the moment by far.
I think that is
Their
why
education policy is quite good.
that is why they won't have them on a debate, because
Yeah,
I think they actually know that they will win support, and also Labour they'd probably class Labour in a debate, because Ed Miliband, I don't know if you've ever seen that interview he did where he just kept saying the same thing because it was obviously the only thing that his spin doctor told him to say. It was when there was something to do with strikes or the unions. I remember it was something, and he was like, as I said before, and but he just kept saying it again and again, and about 6-7 times, and I was thinking, you really are a muppet.
Yeah, yeah, he is.
You can't sit there in an interview and just complete. It doesn't matter, if the bloke said, "What's the weather like today?" He would probably said the same thing.
As I said before, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
He probably wasn't even listening. I mean, the sad thing is that this election should be the easiest election for Labour to win, because Cameron's screwed. Theresa May has been involved in terrorism, in torture. You got UKIP splitting the Conservative vote. The Greens aren't even in the election because they're not being considered by any of the major news networks. The Labour vote's not being split. The Conservative vote's being split. The Lib Dems are pretty much history at the moment.
Did you see the Greens?
It's a perfect win for Labour.
Did you see the Greens comeback poster that they've been putting up at bus
Oh,
stop?
I love that.
It's
No,
got
what was that?
They got Caroline Lucas and I can't remember the other lady's name. So it's 2 ladies, and then underneath it says, "Come on, what you afraid of, boys?" And then it's got.
That's another thing that always raises the question of, is the media sexist? Because they're the only female-led party in Britain.
Yeah. Or are they so frightened of Margaret Thatcher again that we daren't go near another woman?
Yeah, but she wasn't. She had a secret.
Rude. The fact that there could be no female leader for the next couple of generations because Margaret Thatcher scared the living shit out of every British man.
She
had a
scared the
secret
shit out of a
penis.
huge population.
She definitely wasn't a woman.
No.
The iron knob.
I don't think so. Psychopaths, though, they have no gender.
No. I'm just thankful that. Can you imagine if someone like that was your parent? Oh
God.
No.
She's strange. Well, actually, Margaret Thatcher's kids are strange, aren't they? There's that really weird one, Thingy Thatcher. Oh God, what's her name? Carol or
Karen
Karen?
was running for the Conservative, some Conservative seat, I think.
Hello.
Huh?
There's a good video going around at the moment of a Conservative MP taking part in a martial arts video, and you can just watch.
The wrestling one.
You can just watch him getting thrown to the floor.
What happens?
He gets thrown to the floor.
Well, why not?
The small thrills we get.
Well, it shows he's not human, at least.
Shame it's not Cameron.
Well, now
So,
I don't have to rewind Nigel Farage being egged. I've got a new one to watch to boost my rolls for the day.
I didn't read the story, but there was a story yesterday about UKIP's way to combat eggs being thrown at Farage.
The chickens are organised.
They're revolting.
Sorry, guys, I've got to run. I'll speak to you guys next week.
Have you heard from Patrick?
Yep.
How's he going on with that?
The editing?
Yeah.
He's edited a full 3 minutes.
Wow.
Slowly but surely we're getting there.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
No, I remember when he told me over the phone, I was like, oh, 30 minutes, that's not bad, you're going well. And he said, no, 3 minutes.
He's a perfectionist. It's got to
Yeah, but I'm glad with that. I'm happy with that. I'd rather him be a perfectionist than rush
Speaking
it.
of which, I've already been in contact with almost 100% sure that we're going to get the screening in Parliament. So,
cool.
Wow.
On that. So I'll speak to you guys soon.
All right,
Yeah.
then. Have fun.
Take care.
Be good.
Next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello.
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 Hi.
Yeah, you.
Where's your picture gone? Oh, there you are.
No. Oh, we're still live
Oh,
anyway. Do you adding
No, I can't. I haven't managed to communicate. So
Maybe
no.
next week.
Yeah.
So we was going to have another guest, but we can't get hold of him, so tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
See you next week. Bye.
See you next week. Bye.